Hello and welcome to the channel. Today we are starting the first part of our Blue Book of Grammar series, Subjects and Verbs. Today we are mostly going over what subjects and verbs are and how to find them in a sentence. The reason we need to start here is that in the same way that letters are the building blocks of words, subjects and verbs are the building blocks of a sentence. If you can identify the subject and verb in your sentence, you can fix any grammatical issue from that point forward. It is a crucial thing to be able to understand when it comes to grammar. So let's start with some definitions. Nouns. A noun is a person, place, thing, or idea. It can be anything from you, your friends, your home, your school, your pencil, happiness, love, sadness. Those are all technically nouns. There are different types of nouns. We have common nouns, proper nouns, things like that, but that's not going to be crucial to the understanding of today's lesson. We might come back to those another day. Let's talk about verbs. A verb is simply an action word. Anything like swim, walk, am, are, is. Those are all verbs. Even a state of being, such as the verbs am, are, is, was, were, be, words like that, are technically actions, so they are technically verbs. Then subjects are nouns that perform the action of the verb. That sounds a little complicated, but at the end of the day, the subject is simply what does the action. So if I said, I am speaking right now, am speaking is that action, then you ask, okay, who in the sentence is speaking? It's I. So in that sentence, I would be your subject. Not all nouns are subjects, but all subjects are nouns. So let's take a look at our first rule. Touched on this a little bit already, but when we're looking at a sentence and trying to find the subject and the verb, we want to start with the verb. Let's look at this sentence. Joseph ran to the store. Well, Joseph is a noun. Ran is a verb. To is a preposition. The is an article. Store is a noun. So you'll notice we have two nouns, but only one verb. So it's clear that in this sentence, ran has to be your verb. So we would mark that as the main verb in the sentence. Well, if we look at our two nouns, Joseph and store, we ask ourselves, which one of those two is doing the action of running? Well, a store can't really run anywhere. It's clear the way that the sentence is set up that Joseph is doing the running in that sentence. Joseph is your subject. Ran is your verb. Let's talk about a couple of other things that we may need to address in future sentences. First of all, infinitives. Infinitives are verb phrases that begin with the word to, to, the preposition. These are not going to be the main verb in your sentence. The same way that store was in that prepositional phrase in the sentence before, any verb that follows to will not be the main verb in the sentence. It is considered an infinitive. Think to infinity and beyond. We also have linking verbs. We've touched on this a little bit already, but linking verbs are any state of being verb. The ones that you might not think of immediately as being in action, but they are some of the most common verbs. Am, are, is, was, were. Think about how many times a day you say those words. Those are verbs. They are state of being verbs, linking verbs. And then we have our direct object and indirect object. The easiest way for me to remember which one is which is that both receive something. Your direct object directly receives the action. The indirect object just receives the direct object. So, alphabetical order, we usually say direct, then indirect. The direct object goes with the action. Indirect object goes with the direct object. So let's look at another example. I want to bake a cake and give it to Sam. Let's actually start by looking at our prepositional phrases here. So we have two twos. We have to bake and we have to Sam. So we can tell automatically that to bake is not going to be our main verb because it's in that prepositional phrase. It's an infinitive. So we can mark that as an infinitive. Then we notice Sam is going to be the object of that preposition to. We may come back to him in a minute. Now let's identify the verbs in our sentence. We have want. Want would be a verb. And give. Give is also a verb. Well, ask ourselves, who is wanting and who is giving? Well, in that sentence, I. I, in that sentence, is both doing the wanting and the giving. Well then, let's look at our direct object and indirect object. What's receiving the action? Well, the cake is what's being baked, and it is what's being given. So, cake is a direct object. It's being made. It's wanting to be baked, to be more clear. And it will be given to Sam, so it is also a direct object. Well, we also have an indirect object. I mentioned we might come back to Sam. Not only is Sam the object of that preposition to, but Sam is our indirect object because he receives the cake that was being given by by me in the sentence. So let's go on and look at our next rule. You can have multiple subjects and multiple verbs in a sentence. Like we saw in the last sentence, I, in the sentence, went with both want and give. Let's look at this example. Mark and Missy drove home and slept. Let's look for our verbs first. Drove, slept. Well, who is driving? Technically, it's probably just Mark or Missy, but it doesn't clarify. So, Mark and Missy are both subjects that go with drove. Then we ask ourselves, who's sleeping? Also Mark and Missy. So Mark and Missy both go with drove and slept. Let's look at our next rules. First rule, we've gone over a little bit. Has to do with infinitives. And our fourth rule has to do with the understood you. So this sentence says, don't forget to wash the dishes. Well, we have to wash, but we also have do as part of don't and forget. Wash goes with to. It's not going to be your main verb. So that means that do not forget is that part of the verb. But then you ask yourself, well, who's not forgetting here? It can't be the dishes, because that's what's being washed. In a sentence like this that is a command or a request, it is understood that the word you is actually the subject. You don't forget to wash the dishes. It's whoever's being talked to in that moment. So thank you so much for watching the video. If you liked it, please like the video, subscribe, comment, all of those good things. And stay tuned for the next part on subject-verb agreement. Thank you.